What's up, y'all? This is Dr. Craig Waleed, your host here on the Prison to Promise podcast, where I explore strategies formerly incarcerated people use to avoid returning to prison. On this episode, I'm joined by Miss Connie Chisolm, who spent years submerged in drug addiction and in and out of jail before, as she says, learned to flip all of her illegal skills into positive ones. Because of Connie's experience, she is full of knowledge and wisdom that she works tirelessly to share with other women struggling with addiction just as she once did. Please take a moment to listen to the insight, wisdom, and understanding that Connie so passionately shares about her life. Peace. So there we go. So yeah, I'm here with Connie. Connie, what's your last name?
Chisolm.
Chisolm, right. Connie Chisolm. How could I forget that? Because I always remember that. It reminded me of Shirley Chisholm.
Right.
Yeah. But it's a pleasure to be with you. You know, you're well respected in the world of recovery and reentry, and probably by some of the younger and older people in the community.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a pleasure to be here with you. I consider it an honor, to be one of the OGs who've made it through.
Right. The OGs.
Yeah, you're one of the original ones. At least from my era.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of the folks who are a bit older than me, when I was coming up, they're not here or they're not in good shape.
Right.
I mean, you're in good shape. You survived. You still got your mind right. You're holding your family together. So it's an honor to have you here and to be able to have you share some of your jewels with our listeners here at the Prison to Promise podcast.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So just jumping right in, Connie, perhaps you can start by, just telling folks who you are and where you're from.
Okay, so I was born in Batavia and I live currently in Rochester, New York. I grew up outside of Rochester, halfway between Rochester and Buffalo. Two-parent household. My father worked a lot. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. I'm the fifth kid of 7. Everybody has issues in my family. Theirs just didn't take them to where mine took me, so.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I am currently employed with Spiritus Christi Prison Outreach. I am a corrections liaison and case manager, and I also do housing stability. So I help people with housing, and we subsidize people that have come through our program and stuff like that.
Wow, so that's phenomenal. Just hearing about what you're doing with people who are coming out of prison right now.
Mm-hmm.
But what stood out to me about what you just shared about your background is that you come from a 2-parent home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that lots of people who are incarcerated or who have experienced incarceration typically come from a 1-parent home.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, or I'm asking, my question to you is, how did you go from what I imagine was a decent home life, a 2-parent home, to someone who ended up incarcerated?
Well, addiction, addiction doesn't discriminate. I'm a perfect example of that. I grew up with pretty much everything I wanted. But it went from experimental and weekends, partying and stuff like that to, the experimentation came to a point where I found a drug that I really liked, and that was where it started to spiral. It took a while. Disease of addiction is kind of progressive, as most of us know. So yeah, I wasn't like somebody that was, that wasn't expected. Like my parents always told me, you can do anything you want to do, you're the smartest kid and all, you know what I mean? Like I was always good in school. I love school. I was an A student in school, but disease doesn't discriminate.
It sure don't. It don't care where you're from or what you look like or what you have or don't have.
Exactly.
And so that ended up grabbing you and shaping your decisions and your behaviors and your social structure, I'm thinking.
Correct.
And so maybe, you can maybe share a little bit about perhaps what life events perhaps led you to prison, or, how you ended up in prison.
So what happened was, so I've been in and out of jail during the course of the 20 plus years that I used drugs. Drugs have taken me, to a lot of different places. But I think, part of going to jail and getting out and never having a plan and never doing anything and just thinking I was going to do something different, or I was just going to use one substance as opposed to another, was really, I mean, I didn't stop using drugs, and it wasn't my intentions to stop using drugs. It was just, I used to go into the jails for Narcotics Anonymous, and I used to say, my disease, manifests itself in so many different ways that while my disease was progressing, my criminal history progressed. So I went from misdemeanors to felonies, so the last go round was I was actually selling drugs with my second oldest son, and they did a raid, and that's how I ended up. My son ended up, there was three, it was me, his wife, and him, and they ended up saying they were going to prosecute us federally. But what happened is they only prosecuted my son. They gave her probation, and I was given an opportunity to get drug court. So at that time, I took it because I figured it was a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
Little did I know that, somebody else had a better plan. Somebody bigger than me had another plan. And so I was given a drug court and was able to get in a program, and I stayed in that. It was a residential treatment program called Liberty Manor, and I went through that. But they gave my son 10 years in federal prison.
Oh, wow.
So because my kids were so young, like in the course of my using, I had a child that was born addicted to heroin, and my last child was born in jail. So, but that didn't stop me. You know what I mean? Like I continued to get out of jail and do whatever I wanted to do. And it wasn't being a parent. It wasn't being a productive member of society. It wasn't none of those things. I think it was facing some federal time, like made me take a look at it. But even then, when I got to Liberty Manor, it was in the middle of a blizzard, and I looked outside and I was thinking, like, I should really leave here, because I remember the lady told us the door locks on the inside.
Yeah.
And I was just looking out the window, and it's a blizzard and nobody's out there, and I'm thinking how I'm going to leave, but where was I going? So
your addiction was
that was the beginning of one of my little epiphanies, so yeah, that
sounds like your addiction was talking.
I have a 42-page rap sheet.
Wow. So yeah, you've been at it for a while.
Yeah, so I was real busy out there. I had multiple arrests, but back in the day, they were like giving you a global resolution to it. So your disposition would look like you plead to this, and it's going to satisfy this, and this. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but your arrests still show on your record.
Absolutely.
But while I was at this residential treatment place, they linked me up with a lot of services. So, I was able to take advantage of them.
So you never made it behind the wall to prison?
No, I have children that
Okay.
have. So
But
all three of my boys, I have four children.
mhm,
All three of my boys have been in and out of prison. Like I said, the one that I went to jail with,
mhm,
that went to federal prison.
mhm,
He completed his federal bid and then came out and got a state bid.
mhm.
And it's the cycle, it's the learned behavior. It's
Absolutely.
seeing the fast lifestyle. And it's
Right.
like another thing that I used to say when I'd go into the jail is like, um, people would sit in the group because I also go in for my work and I run a group for my work.
Mhm.
And I'd have some young ladies in there that would be relatively young, like 20 and stuff like that, and say, well, I don't do those kind of drugs, I'm not here for drugs. And at the end of the day, after talking and stuff, it'd be like, well, I sold drugs. I said, well, you know what, money is about the most powerful drug on the planet.
Sure enough.
You
Sure
know what I
enough.
mean? So
Sure enough. If I could go back, Connie, because you said some pretty heavy things too, um, that really stood out for me. And one thing that I've been learning a lot about is mothers who have given birth while incarcerated, and the
mhm,
trauma that they endure while being
mhm,
incarcerated, giving birth, and the trauma that also may even transfer over to the child who's newborn coming into
mhm,
the world in a carceral setting. Um,
mhm.
what would you say to young mothers who are in the life one way or another, who may be pregnant or at have a chance of becoming pregnant? Like, what would you tell them, about the importance of, I guess, not getting in trouble, not going to prison, not going to jail?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of things that lead up to it, and if you're not aware, you're not aware. And if you don't have the resources, I remember when, I was exposed to the child protective system,
Hmm.
for having a kid that was born heroin addicted. I didn't want to tell them because I really thought that, like, it was a stigma, you know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
So until the child was born, then that's when everything came out. But
Right.
having you don't have to get to that point. Like, if you're finding out that you're just smoking weed or you're just drinking, anything that's going to harm a child is going to harm a child, but it's also going to do something to you mentally. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
When you find yourself, when you're doing these behaviors and you're thinking that it's okay, it's really hard. Because I remember having this conversation with my son when he was my oldest son, Paul, who and when he was like 15. And I'm telling him, listen, I used to do those same things and look at where I'm at. That's you, that's not me.
Hmm.
And then years later, he's gone to prison. He's got 3 state numbers. You know what I mean?
People don't think fat meat greasy.
Yeah,
Yeah, especially young folk, they think, like he said, that's you, that's not me. But it's pretty universal, and
yeah,
mothers know because mothers have been there, parents have been there. We know,
right.
and even with my own
Or they
children.
think, or sometimes they separate the drugs, like I just smoke weed or I just drink. But at the end of the day, you can find yourself in certain situations, or you can not be using those things. You can, quote unquote, get clean, but you want to hang out on the block. Bullets don't have no names on them.
Oh, say that again, sus.
You know what I mean? They
Show enough.
don't.
Yeah, you
So
got to
you
say
can be
that.
just innocently, yeah, I'm looking all good now because I stopped getting high and I'm doing all this. And the next thing you know, and the way it is out here now, they're shooting on a regular.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's in many cities and towns. And
Yep.
yeah, if you're using drugs, that's going to put you in those situations, in those circumstances. Even if you're not hanging out, when you go to cop your drugs or whatever it is,
Yeah,
increased
exactly. You
risk.
can run
So
up in the house and the police are running up in there right after you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so another thing you mentioned too, Connie, was for a long time you never had a plan. Can you talk about the importance of having a plan or what that means not to have a plan?
Well, I know from working with a lot of the women that come from the prisons, um I do a phone screen with, I try and do a phone screen. So with Albion, they're really very accommodating for me. And I either go in, pre-COVID, I was going out there to see them and meet with them and do an interview and just finding out what programs, because there's still programs out there, but sadly, New York State has gotten rid of a lot of the reentry programs, especially for the men.
Mm-hmm.
But and I know this because I was doing reentry groups with a few people from Rochester, and it was Rochester, Buffalo area, and we were going out to Orleans, and Albion to the men's prison and doing like a speaker jam. But that they phased that out. They stopped. The people that were ready to get out 6 months prior were mandated to do these programs to get them ready to get back into the program. So the plan would be take advantage of whatever programs are out there or in while you're in, link up with some services, find out in your area what services are available,
right?
You know, talk to up here it's called an ORC, your offender rehab counselor. So you talk to them and you look into how you want to do something different, because I know a lot of people, that's not where they don't want to come out of prison and like be going to like where I work at, like a halfway house that, you know, has rules and stuff, when I've just done X amount of time and now I still got to answer to somebody. Well, if you're on paper, you're going to answer to somebody anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned the halfway house with the rules, and going back to a piece of your story when you talked about being in one of the women's houses, I'm thinking that was like a halfway house, right?
Well, Liberty Manor was residential treatment. So I was one of those people that I didn't get a chance for a halfway house. They sent me directly. So I was there a year. You know, but my plan initially was not, but you know, my higher power had other plans and they weren't my plans. So whatever. But you know, I learned a lot. And what I did is I watched the people that were successful while they were there, and I just followed behind them. So as good as I used to be able to follow behind all the negative people, I started trying to follow some positive people.
What was the switch? What made you start wanting to follow the positive people? What made you want to get off of that fast track and get your life in order?
Well, initially my motives weren't as pure as all that. You know what I mean? My motives were like, oh, I see this person is getting to go out and do this, this, and this. And, you know, they seem to be like enjoying themselves or whatever. So while I was there, they had, back then they had a thing at the outpatient program at Restart that was called the Bean Project. So because I was in their facility, in treatment at their facility, I was able to get involved with that. And that led to, it was just like a self-esteem building thing. So you go in and you're showing accountability and you're showing, but it's learned, you know, it's like things that I forgot growing up were brought back, you know?
Right. Kind of like clearing the path that had been grown over.
Right. And it gave me skills. So even though it wasn't a lot of money, it was something that you could take pride in, because, you know, money, the fast money is always good, but all the fast money isn't good money.
Right.
You know, so
it sounds like that also helped you to kind of reestablish values that you had grown up with, certain morals, things of that nature. So, wow, that's really powerful. You know, and talk about, if you would, the structure. How important is structure, you say, for people that are coming out of prison or jail, or who are in recovery trying to get their life straight?
Well, and that's what we do, where the place that I work at is like, it's considered a shelter. It's considered like, the system looks at it as like a homeless shelter, but it's not. It's a home, and it's small. And, you know, like we only hold like 11 people, but that structure helps. It's like a transition piece. So you're leaving from always having somebody monitoring you to coming into a place where you're allowed some freedoms, but you're also expected to have some accountability. you know?
That's the word that was on my tip of my tongue, accountability.
Right. So they make out schedules and they follow their, and we approve their schedules. And, you know, it's not like, okay, there's a 5 o'clock curfew. So I'm just gonna, I don't have nothing to do today. I'm just gonna go out and hang out. That's not happening. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like you're
right.
going, so we encourage them to go to 12-step meetings. We encourage them to build up their support networks. If you have an addiction, and honestly, for me, I may be biased, but I believe that anybody can benefit. It doesn't matter if you've ever struggled with alcohol or drug use. If anybody can benefit from a 12-step program, because
Wow.
it's a program that you incorporate into your life, and it's not just after a while you've stopped using the drugs. It's helping you to change your behaviors and your thinking and all of that stuff. So it's a whole bunch of stuff. And one of the blessings in Rochester is that we have a real strong recovery base here. You know,
Yeah.
we have a lot of resources and we have a lot of reentry. Not as much as I'd like to see, but you know, they're working on it, you know.
Absolutely. You know, I know that there's one association in Rochester called the Reentry Association of Western New York.
Mm-hmm.
Acronym is RAWNY, RAWNY. And I know that they're doing some things trying to make some moves happen there. And I sit on the board of directors for them from afar. But I'm not sure how far along we are right now to really getting boots on the ground and making things happen. But I'm mentioning that because that might be a place you might be interested in checking out.
Yeah, definitely. I had a Delina actually sent this woman, a friend that was interested in opening up a house. So she came over and I just basically gave her like how it works, you know, like she had her board set up, she has the facility set up. She just needed information on like how's it running, how's it working, you know. And by meeting with people like that, you're building up more of your supports and more contacts, because at the end of the day, we can link up somebody that may not want to be at Jennifer House, and maybe that's a better place for them. You know what I mean? So here, I've got another resource for a client that may be struggling in a certain area that maybe they can help them with.
And you know, you've said a couple of times the word support. How important is support for people who are, again, trying to recover from addiction or recover from the street life or trying to get their life back in order from after doing time in jail or prison? How important do you think supports are? And how important have they been for you in your journey?
So for me, that was one of the first things I learned early on, is to build up your support networks. Have people that you can call on and that you can not somebody that's just gonna like be there and give you a ride. Like it's more than that. It's like somebody you can talk to and you can like, I say this a lot. I have a very small, intimate support network. However, I have a lot of people that I know. And at any given moment, if any of those people aren't available, I know I can reach out to other people. And that has the ripple effect, because it's moved on to work, the people I work with, the people that, you know, I'm in contact with through work, you know, just through the Bean Project, people that I've worked with there, you know, like I still
20 years ago,
talk to people at CFC.
And that was over 20 years ago, wasn't it?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow. So how
And
long?
before they shut down, I was actually sending a lot of the girls that were ready at that point, like they were in, because we have phases. So the first phase is like a stabilization phase. The second phase, you get a little more freedom. The third phase is you may be able to have an overnight. And that's where your supports come in, because some people, they've done so much damage that they don't have family, or family's not willing to help them like that. So you're coming out of prison and they don't want to talk to you. Like, don't talk to me about it. Show me.
Right.
You know, so So that's why supports to me are big. It's one of my main things is like build up those supports, because if family's not available, you're building a whole new family.
Absolutely. And as we know, when it comes to, I guess, interacting with each other as human beings, words don't have as much meaning or effect as behavior does. Show me the money, right? Do it.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it. Be about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And where I work, what we do, a lot of the people that work there currently, I'm like one of the few that did not go through that house. So we believe in hiring within. And we also give them an opportunity to do an overnight or something when they leave. So when they leave, there's housing in place for them. So we have some permanent supportive housing apartments. And then we also, I run the rapid rehousing program. So what we do is we subsidize for people that are wanting to go back to work.
How
And
important
so
is
we'll
housing?
subsidize.
How important is housing for people? Again, this group of people we're talking about. If they don't have housing, how much less or how much more successful will they be?
Well, if you don't have housing, I think right there, it's like no matter all the work I'm doing, I still don't have a place to live. So what's the point? I might as well go back to what I know, because I know that I can make some big money. And you get all these crazy plans in your head. Well, I know I at one time had plans like that, like I'm just going to do this, this, and this. I'm not going to use any drugs. But for me, I know that never works out. But
Right.
because the behaviors and the and everything else go with the drug use.
Right.
But the housing piece, I think it just like reinforces that when you get to that point, 6-9 months down the road after you're out, and you're doing some things and you're feeling a little more confident, these people we're saying like, we believe in you. We believe in you to the point that we're going to put you over in this apartment and we're going to pay your rent, or we're going to pay a portion of it so that you're not totally broke and have to revert to criminal behavior. Because that's the other piece.
That's dope.
For what social services gives a client, there's no way you can live in any decent area. You can't even find anything. The most they give you up here is $440 for a single person.
That's to keep you poor.
Everything.
Keep you broke.
So we put them in an apartment, and then DSS will pay $200 and we'll pay the balance of the rent. That way they have money. They don't have to revert to criminal behaviors.
Yeah, that's a big help. That is definitely a big help. An unfortunate piece about DSS is, though we think that, or though they say that they're the help, once people start making an X amount of money, they cut them off before they can even get their legs up on them.
Right.
It's like it's an effort really to keep people in a certain socioeconomic bracket, not see people rise up out of the muck, the mire, or whatever poor condition that they're in.
And that's why that affordable housing piece, it's not just about affordable housing, it's about having habitable housing. Someplace that you're gonna be happy to come home to. If you live in a dump, you don't care if you go home or not.
Absolutely. And that's a big piece there, what you said, habitable housing, not just housing. Yeah. That's big. And you talked about just a few sentences back, you also talked about your own journey, and how when people such as yourself and maybe other people would say, I'm just going to use drugs, but that never really worked. I'm only going to use certain types of drugs, but that never really worked out for them or for you. What were maybe some of your biggest obstacles that you faced once you decided, hey, I'm going to get my life right, and I'm not going back?
I think learning to for me, it was like the money. Because I remember on my first pass out at Liberty Manor, I was probably there 60, 90 days. And I was able to go out someplace by myself. And I didn't have any money. And I was depending on, certain people to drop me off cigarettes or whatever, and I'm like, I could make a move in a store real quick and have some money and it'll carry me over. And just something, I guess, when you're involved with a program and you hear some things, like with clarity,
Yeah.
it's just the light bulb. It was one of the light bulbs that came on. It's like, that you cannot do these things, because it's like all of those things are things I did when I was using. So it would be like, I'm going to go in a store, I'm going to steal some things, I'm going to sell the things, and then I'm going to get the money, and then I'm going to come back, and then there's something missing. The missing piece is that I didn't buy drugs and I didn't get high. So that wasn't going to work for me. So I just had to learn how to be humble and accept what I had a roof over my head. And that's real hard. That's real hard when you're in a lifestyle where you're getting money every day. That's one of the hardest things. And that's like right up there with the drugs.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking as you're talking. And so I'm wondering, like, how do you arrest that part of your brain and tell it and just put it down or subdue it so that it doesn't push you to go ahead and commit that crime, to steal those whatever and sell them, and then find yourself back in that lifestyle? Because as you know, as humans, we're creatures of habit, and it's really hard to break habits.
Yep. But they also say if you do something repeatedly over 30-day period, and you do the same thing every day, it's like going to a meeting every day for 30 days, it becomes a habit. It's just like, it's rewiring our thinking, and that's one of the reasons why we encourage women at the house to go to meetings. And then we're not like some facilities, once you graduate from that facility, you can't come back there until you've been out of it for a year. No, we want our people coming right back.
Right.
Because it gives hope to the people that are coming in, that are sitting in the house, that are new there.
And that's why you guys also hire from within the house as well, to continue the cycle of hope going.
Yep. All of our directors, all three of the last three directors that we've had, Sarah, Delina, Sarah, and now Lisa, have all been residents at one time or another.
Wow. And I talked to Delina today, and she told me where she's living now. She's like, people were still discriminating against her because of her background with a felony, and so it's hard for her to find housing. She said, so you know what I did? I just bossed up and bought a house like later for y'all.
Right. Right.
I'm like, yo, that's dope. That's really dope. But yo, you said something else, Connie. You keep dropping these jewels. They're very subtle. And so for people that are listening, if they're not really paying attention, they're going to miss them. But you also mentioned, wiring or rewiring your thinking. That I know from my own experience, it's so important. But again, I don't know. I don't know if there's a question that comes behind that. I'm blown away by the jewels, the light but heavy jewels. So important to rewire our thinking, because at the core of who we are is that part of our existence that thinks and feels. And so without that being on track, I know that our life is off track. Our decisions are off track. Our outcomes are off track. And so as a person thinks, so are they. So I just wanted to confirm, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah. And I think, being able to, when you rewire your thinking, you also see, after you start rewiring and you start applying some of the things you've learned, because just learning it isn't enough. You have to really apply it in your life.
Right.
I think for me, with my kids, the damage that I did with the result of them deciding they wanted to be drug dealers and all that, because that's all they saw and that's all they knew, it's showing them. So now you lead by example, so sometimes you don't have to. So I guess my words, and this is, I've said this a few times in both the jail group and in the NA group, is that like, you don't have to go down the path I went. This can be your last rodeo right here. You know what I mean? Like, you really can just take it from me. I'm here to tell you, I've done it for you. You don't have to do it.
Right.
Because the end result you're not going to like. Jails, institutions, and death.
Absolutely. That's the only outcome. I mean, again, such a heavy and simplistic jewel. The only outcome is jails, institutions, and death. And most folks want to live as long as they can And most folks don't want to find themselves in jail, prison, or some psychiatric ward or some other type of institution.
But if you do, you will get released, because 90% of people that go into jails and prisons are coming out.
Yeah.
So that's the time to start thinking about, what do I want to do different?
Yeah.
And one of the first things is, I can't go back to the block. I can't go see my homeboy over here, because we already know.
Right.
You know what I mean? I've seen it with my own kids. I've seen it with my own kids.
As well as your own life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Such great insights, Connie. In closing, I want to ask you for a deliberate, direct piece of wisdom or insight for someone trying to stay out of jail, stay out of prison, or reclaim their life from addiction. What would be like your direct piece of wisdom or insight for someone like that?
So take advantage of the help, take advantage of the resources. If you don't know what the resources are, ask somebody. Closed mouth don't get fed. You know that expression.
Yep, I was about to say that.
You got to ask, just like we asked which house had the best dope. We got to ask which place can I go and get some help that I need.
Wow.
It's the same thing with, being in jail and being in prison, It's a lot of, you see a lot of the behaviors, but if I start working on my behaviors while I'm in there and I'm not getting caught up in that stuff, then I have a good shot of getting out. But even if you do, there's places to go.
Yeah.
You get on the internet. The internet is the main thing. Find those places, resources.
Yeah. Absolutely. So utilize your resources.
Yes,
Ask for
absolutely.
help. Yeah. Absolutely. Connie, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I appreciate you sharing your wisdom, your insights, and taking a moment out of your day just to talk with me and to enlighten our listeners here on Prison to Promise podcast.
Anything that I can do to help, because I truly believe that if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Right on. It's a human condition, right?
Yep.
Absolutely, and we're all humans.
Yep.
Yeah. So with that, we're out.
All right. Thank you so much, and you enjoy your weekend.
Thank you so much, Connie, and I wish you and your family the best as you continue to thrive in this world.
Thank you.
Be well.
Bye.
If you are interested in contacting Connie Chisolm, you can email her at lowercase CCHISOLM at SPIRITUSCHRISTIPO.org. That's C Chisolm at Spiritus Christi PO.org.